Hey there, Ron Sullivan, your online hitting consultant. I want to give a quick summary of the top hand-arm therapy program. It basically is a 14-day program where I collaborate back and forth with a parent and their player with specific drills that we've prescribed to help players understand this backside mechanism. You know, the hand that's closest to the barrel for young players is usually the problem overall. The flaws that we see in young players' swings are typically a response or compensation to the fact that they have no backside that's in control, right? So let's take, for instance, arm barring. Arm barring is almost always a compensation for a player that doesn't have a good, strong backside. As you'll see with, especially in exaggerated senses, where players that have really extreme drag, they almost always have more extreme arm bars than everybody else. And why is that the case? Well, if you take the arm bar away first, right, what you're taking away is actually a compensation for the backside not working very strong. And so they're actually creating a better situation by doing that. Now, that doesn't mean it's right. I'm just saying that they're creating some sense of leverage for the barrel by reaching back, because the backside's not doing anything. They're doing something by reaching back, right? So now if your player has an arm bar, that wasn't to say that you should just be happy that they're doing it, but just understand why they're doing it. They're doing it because they have no idea what the backside is supposed to do. So that's what the top hand arm therapy program is designed to do. Players that drag the bat, racing elbow draggers and things like this, really can be helped by a better understanding of what the hand that's closest to the barrel does. And so in the beginning phases of the therapy, probably days 1 through day 5, and those days change per player, but days 1 through 5, we challenge them with this very awkward drill. You know, one of the things that the scientists have determined, their stages of learning, they said that the first stage of learning anything new, no matter what discipline, is awkwardness. This first drill will definitely challenge your player. We're trying to guarantee that your player is going to learn something new by forcing them through the first stage of learning. And what we're working on in this first drill is making sure that a player understands a completely different direction with the top hand arm. And that ultimately we're trying to go from the top of the swing directly to where we need to go. Now, in some ways, right, that might be a little bit of an exaggeration, but if you're ever going to move a mechanism straight, or feel like it's moving straight to its destination, it probably should be this mechanism. Young players don't use that. They just literally is dragging. They're using their torso to turn everything. And speaking of that, in this first few days, we're also trying to get a player, because most players that drag the bat or have no understanding of what the top hand arm does, they're front side dominant. And so what we try to do is we try to give a player the understanding that the backside is driving, excuse me for that, the backside's driving, the front side is responding. We're not trying to keep players from moving their front shoulder, but we're trying to make sure that players understand why the front shoulder moves. The front shoulder does not move to create energy for the backside. The front shoulder should move as a response to what the backside is saying it's supposed to do. And that's exactly what this first phase of training will do, is we'll try to challenge a player to feel just that. There's certain checkpoints that we're looking for in this stage of the swing that players don't feel, so we can assure that they're feeling the barrel staying through the zone, right, getting in the zone and staying through the zone for as long as possible. The next level of training, obviously, we have to put 2 hands on the bat. Try to get a player to feel what they're working on here, but most importantly, what we're trying to get players to understand is that the mechanisms that are holding the bat have a job to do. And so we try to work from these exaggerated connected positions to get a player to understand that these guys are what's holding the bat, and they've got a role to play in the swing. Without those guys understanding what to do, you can forget it. It doesn't matter how hard you swing the bat, you don't understand fundamentally what these guys are going to do, and so you'll never be able to make adjustments. You'll never be able to take the bat in the direction where you need to go, right? You'll never have a bottom hand arm response if you don't understand how these mechanisms that are holding the bat work, right? And so from here, once we understand direction, and how the mechanisms that are holding the bat should perform, we move to the third part of the progression, which is a different level of connection. Many of you will recognize this as what Josh Donaldson talked about in the MLB.com video. I think that there were certain things that Josh Donaldson was true. I'm sure that he feels at this point he just turns his body around in a circle. But one thing to consider is that he also had a pretty good understanding of how the mechanisms that hold the bat work before he even started considering these changes that created his MVP season. So obviously the changes of this understanding of this connection was really important. But if your young player doesn't understand how the moving parts that are connected to the bat work, this level of connection will make no difference. And this is why we work in a progression in the top hand arm therapy. So we're still trying to establish the same understanding of the body to barrel relationship, but we also understand that the mechanisms that are holding the bat have a job to do. All right, and so then we work to the final phase of the training, which is just working on the technique. You know, it's my experience, you put a kid on their feet after you've done a lot of isolation drills and you think everything's just going to be perfect. And it's just not the case. When kids go to their feet, suddenly old habits kick in. And so what we try to do, again, working from each progression, we get them on their feet and then try to get them to feel the same thing. And we simplify as we work from the technique by taking away the pre-swing movements and the timing movement. Not that those things aren't important, but what you'll see with kids is that a lot of times they'll start to break down because that's their old habit is tied to their old pre-swing movements. So first you have to start right by just working on what we call the technique. Right? Feeling and trusting these movements while we're on our feet goes a long ways. If you're interested in top hand arm therapy, reach out to ronsullivan99@gmail.com. Thanks.